Now, in this one, Mitch Trubisky, of all people. Remember him? Yeah, Mitch Trubisky. The Bears made sure to trade to get Mitch Trubisky in the draft, and it was going to be their quarterback for the next 20 years. How's that working out? So if you didn't see this, and I don't know how you could have missed it, assuming that you're a fan of football, but Mitch Trubisky is taking his talents to the Pittsburgh Steelers. A former Bears prodigy who fell on hard times in Chicago is planning on signing a 2-year contract to bunker down in western Pennsylvania. And he's not going to get redonkulous money, but he's going to get more money than I'll ever make and you'll ever make. $14.2 million smackaroos. A lot of dead presidents there for the aforementioned Mitch Trubisky. And if he plays well and he meets all of the criteria in the incentives, then Mitch Trubisky will cash in $27 million. Okay. Trubisky picking the Steelers over the Giants. So let us discuss the question. Here's the question. What is your initial reaction to the Steelers choosing Mitch Trubisky? Could have gotten any of these available quarterbacks, could have made an effort to get anyone they wanted, and this is the guy. So on the MALLER point grading system, 1 to 10, with 10 being your team has just brought back Tom Brady. That would be the Buccaneers. Mitch Trubisky on the MALLER point grading system to the Steelers is a 4. A 4 on the MALLER point grading system. I've got Bridge, Idiots, and Marvel. And we will tie all of these things into a nice, neat package, and we'll put it out in the ocean in a bottle. It's a message in a bottle, and we'll see what happens. All right, so this is not a day of celebration for Pittsburgh. Obviously not. Pittsburgh did not win the quarterback lottery here. They merely got a warm body to hold down the position. As we understand it, Mitch Trubisky will be the starting quarterback. That's what we're hearing there. There's not going to be a fugazi competition, not a real competition with Mason Rudolph. Of course, you don't have to be in Pittsburgh and you don't have to be a Steeler fan to know that if Mike Tomlin and ownership was comfortable with Mason Rudolph, then they would not have brought in Mitch Trubisky. There'd be no reason to do that. But alas, they are not comfortable that Mr. Rudolph is the guy, so he will be the backup. And who knows if he'll even be the backup. He might not even be that by the time they get done. So what does this do for the Pittsburgh Steelers here? What does this do for them? They get a warm body to play quarterback. Mitch Trubisky is nothing more than a bridge, but not a well-made bridge, a dilapidated bridge. The kind of a bridge that's got those little twigs and those sticks that's holding it up. It's terrifying. That's the bridge, and that's your bridge, and you've got to go over that bridge. It's nerve-wracking. So the word is underwhelming. That is the word for Mitch Trubisky. He is a guy that played in the NFL. At his very best, he was a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, and that's depending on if you grade on a curve. Middle-of-the-pack quarterback going back to 2017. And that's being very generous. His last 3 years as a starter in Chicago, Mitch Trubisky, people forget because they seem to think that he's good now, that he didn't play last year. But Trubisky ranked 29th, 22nd, and 28th. That's his quarterback rating according to the advanced statistics there, Pro Football Focus, and others. His numbers were terrible. The eyeball test. The eyeball test makes you wish you were Blind Scott. That's the eyeball test. We were unimpressed is the word also, unimpressed. The terrible towel, which is synonymous for the Pittsburgh Steelers, is going to have more than one meaning. In fact, forget the terrible towel. They might want to come up with the TTP. Are you down with me? That's the Trubisky toilet paper. Because there'll be a lot of performances where you're going to need some nice toilet paper watching this cat play quarterback. Now, Mitch Trubisky, I will give him credit. The people around him, I don't know the agency, but the posse around Mitch Trubisky has done a tremendous job of building the fairy tale. Right? It's wild. No accountability for him being a bag of suck in Chicago based on his performance. It was the offensive line's fault. It was the coaching fault. It was the receiver's fault. It was the front office's fault. It was this guy, that guy, everyone's fault. Every man, woman, and child. It was their fault, not Trubisky. Of course, none of it has to fall on his shoulders. And that's just the start. Now, Mitch's homies, we'll call them, were able to plant stories with useful idiots in the NFL media. My favorite by far was the jabroni over at state-sponsored NFL Media's website who compared Mitch Trubisky to Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, who'll be in the Hall of Fame, and even Phillip Rivers, who will likely end up in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, compared Trubisky to all of those guys. Favorably, by the way, favorably. Can't make it up. You cannot make it up. It's also not a good sign when now you plant the stories with the useful idiots in the media and all that, but even the hot take guys, the hot take artists, and I'm an amateur hot take artist, but I'm working overnight, so I'm not a real professional hot take artist. But the real hot take guys that work during the day and all that, they're even having trouble spinning this one. Like some of the positive spin I've heard is, well, if everything goes right for Mitch Trubisky, he could be the Steelers' Ryan Tannehill. Okay, so let me get that straight. So Trubisky will be your Tannehill, a guy that has derailed the Tennessee Titans in the playoffs year after year because when the playoffs come around, he blows. That guy, so he'll be a good regular season quarterback that will stink in the playoffs. Okay, I got it. Has a high upside. What does that mean? You have a big ass? Does that mean he's got a high upside, a big booty, big badunkadunk? Come on now. Now, here's what I expect to happen. Using the knowledge I have from being a distant relative of Nostradamus and friend of Nostradamus, and I have the MALLER crystal ball, I expect the Steelers to run a rudimentary offense similar to what the Saints did in New Orleans with Sean Payton last year with the crab legs quarterback himself, famous Jameis Winston. So I expect something similar to that. The Steelers have been known to run the ball obsessively anyway, so they did some of that with Big Ben, the hide the quarterback offense. And as far as the chances of Mitch Trubisky being a Cinderella story and having a great redemption, I give it nothing more than a puncher's chance. Nothing more than a puncher's chance. It is a fiasco. Now, it's only a short-term fiasco, so you can't get too worked up on it, but still a fiasco. But wait, there's more. Last word. So until proven otherwise, Mitch Trubisky is the same flawed quarterback he was with the Bears. Nothing has changed. Now, Mitch had a total of, I think it was 8 passes last season. The last 2 years, he's a little over 300 passes. The NFL is the only business I know of whereby by not playing, your stature somehow improves in the eyes of the media. Seriously, if you're a programmer at Google and you had worked somewhere else and you get laid off and you haven't done any programming for a period of time and maybe occasionally on the weekends, do they then think of you as a better programmer for Google because you did not do anything over the last year for the most part? I mean, the NFL, it's fascinating to me. It really is. And so Mitch Trubisky is a marvel. He's not a modern Marvel. He's more like a Spider-Man Band-Aid made by and endorsed by Marvel there. Like, some have said that the winning culture is the key. I've heard that from the hot take artist. Excuse my French, but phooey, I say to that. Mitch Trubisky was not surrounded by the bad news bears in Chicago. In fact, the infrastructure was pretty good. It's another thing the Trubisky clan don't want you to know about. But when Trubisky was there, they had regularly a top 10 defense in Chicago. In fact, his rookie year, the Bears had the 7th-ranked defense. His second year, Trubisky was the beneficiary of the 3rd-ranked defense in the NFL with the Bears. They were 8th in 2019, and then 2011, or 2020 rather, they were ranked 11th. So it was the performance of Trubisky that often was the turd in the punch bowl for the Bears. And far too often, he was the one that wet the bed. And he didn't wake up, and he was just covered in you know what. So good luck to the Pittsburgh receivers during his final season in Sweet Home Chicago, the home of the great deep dish pizza. Mitch Trubisky was 31st in completion percentage from a clean pocket. We've used that stat on the show before. It's an important stat. So that means the argument, well, if only the Steelers have a good offensive line, Trubisky will be fine. We've heard that a lot. It's bullcrap. It's bullcrap. Trubisky, his last year in Chicago, when he had no one interfering, that means that no defenders were in his face. He was the wild thing, 31st in the NFL. The only quarterback worse that year was Carson Wentz. And now he's on his third team, or second team since he left Philadelphia, but third team overall. And so Godspeed to the Steeler fans. I know you're out there. You're like, well, it's different in Pittsburgh. We've got the culture. Okay, yeah, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. And everything will go right and be much different unless it won't.